what's happened in this session? Earlier in the meeting, everyone was filling the front seats. Now everyone's lurking at the back, so maybe your planes are going, or you just want to make an exit if you're not interested in this session. But I'm Leslie Thompson, and I'm going to run this session with Amy. And I've got a really hard act to follow, following Amy's storytelling yesterday. This is about digital transformation, and I was trying to think how I might key you all in. So I want to tell a story, and the story relates to my life before Elsevier, and I want to take you back to the early 2000s. And I worked in the UK as a research funder. And we had no digitization of proposals. So every university that wanted to submit a proposal would get all of their academics to fill in a case for support and a proposal form. That was normally about 40 pages. Sometimes it was 80 pages. And I can remember one proposal that came in at 700 pages. And then we required not one copy of that proposal, but 6 copies of that proposal. So actually the print rooms in the universities were beavering away, and really beavering away, because professors don't write their proposals till the last minute. So there's a huge queue in the print room to get all these proposals printed, and then they were late, so the post would not do to post them to Research Council HQ. So professors used to get in their cars and drive to where we were based in southwest England. Big institutions like Imperial or Oxford would hire vans and would turn up at the doorstep with vans of proposals. And that's just where the story started, because then all the proposals came into the building. The floor where we looked at them was super reinforced because of the weight. And then when they came in, they were all divided out. They were posted to referees with no idea if the referees would respond. And then a set of proposals were collated into a volume, normally with 60 to 120 proposals. That was like kilograms. It was like 20 kilograms. And they were posted out to the peer review committee members, who then would go to the peer review meeting having read them all, supposedly, with rucksacks, and they looked like a group of turkeys turning up. And then when the decisions were made, somebody got their typewriter out and typed on yellow paper with carbon copies behind it the results. So if your grant was funded, you got a grant letter. Now that was 20 years ago. If I think now, and where we'd be 20 years from now, I think we'll be in a very changed state in universities with digitization. And I can't quite imagine what it might be like. My experience over 20 years says we've really got to stretch our imaginations to think about how collectively we help transform universities so the researchers are doing what they do best, which is the thinking and the doing, and we support them with ease and without stress for the professional staff. So that's my story. Amy, I didn't have a tree story, but let's go on. So I want to start with a poll. So can you all get this session up on your app? And can I ask you, when you've got this session up on your app, to answer this question? It's slightly different from Max's question yesterday, but you've had 2 days to think about this question, and so I want a bit of your reflection now. So which phrase encapsulates digital transformation in your institution? Is it complete? Let me just share, I'm a non-exec on a governance board of a university. I have yet to see a university that would honestly answer complete, but I lived to see that day. Patchy, nascent, not a priority, difficult or driven. And let's see what your magic fingers are pressing. God, I was worried then that complete came up. So we've got patchy, and we've got difficult, and we've got driven. Okay. So I think the fact it's difficult is a really good reason for you all to be at this conference. Because I've seen so many examples of people trying to borrow, learn and steal off each other, that this is a journey that no institution and no organisation will do on their own. And if you're working in institutions, having a buddy group to help you is really important. So that's slightly different to what you answered yesterday. Okay, so we had a similar conference to this in Chicago early this year, and this is not a scientific poll. This is Amy in the bar early in the evening asking people their views of digital transformation. Okay, so we had a whole range of answers. It must have been mid-evening in the bar because nobody gave us one word answer, which is the question. But actually, I think it's an interesting reflection that both in Europe and APEC that are here today, and in the US and the Americas, we had similar reactions. And I just love this observation that I got off LinkedIn. And it was within the last month. I've not attributed it. But I don't think that is a bad comment from a university on how some of their things happen. I think it's a very honest comment from some university. I'll let you read it for yourselves. So I want to share one other story. Nobody in Elsevier knows this, but back in 2010, I was asked if I'd join as a non-exec a shared services board. It was a shared services board for all of the research funders together. And then the government, driving efficiency in the UK, decided they would make this shared services company a shared services company for a third of all government services. Now, what I learnt from that, if I didn't know it working in research funding and working with universities, is we had the infrastructure, and that was useless. What we could not get to was the processes and the operations. Everybody knew better. Everybody would say, we used to do it this way, so we still do it this way. And actually, every time you don't align your processes, you add on cost. And actually, if the processes need to be different, that's one thing. But if the processes are different just because people have a passion for it, that's not acceptable. But in order to overcome that, the leadership is critically important, and even more important, the people that are trying to enact it. So we did have a very successful shared services centre. It's still going, but it was one of the most challenging boards I've ever sat on. It makes sitting on a university board look like a walk in the park, because trying to align government departments in the UK, maybe it's different elsewhere, but in the UK, it was a disaster. And actually, everybody has payroll. It's not complicated payroll, really, but everybody wanted to do it their own way. So I think this diagram that Max showed yesterday is a really important touchstone for all of us that are trying to do this really important work. If you have the infrastructure, you're dead in the water, unless along with the infrastructure, you've got some strategic vision, you've got people, and that's all of you superstars here today, and your core business activities. And universities are unusual institutions, because Judy can say to all of us, run left, and we say, how fast? In universities, there's not sort of a structure and a discipline of top-down management. It's sort of consensual, maybe we'll get there, which layers a whole level of complexity on trying to achieve digital transformations. Judy can say we will. University profs will say, pardon? Oh. And I'm married to one. So, about a year ago in Elsevier, we surveyed research leaders, academic leaders across the globe, people who are running universities, and we asked them some simple questions. It was a very simple question. And the question was, what does high performance truly mean in academia? And we asked some questions around their strategy, the opportunities, collaborations and partnership and funding, which are sort of linked together, operations and reputation. Then we said, where do you think you are today, and where to be the organisation that you really aspire to be, do you need to be? And Max gave you a sneak preview of this yesterday. But what they showed very strongly was high digital adoption services adoption rate and effective digital transformation. They thought was really important, but they scored themselves way off the pace today. And I'm not sure if we asked any of you, we would get a different result to those two questions. But I think that says something about people who are leading universities today, knowing a journey they have to go on. They're making that journey helped and really enabled by all of you, and I hope Elsevier predominantly, but actually to get to their end points, they know they've got a bit of a stretch. So, I like this. Amy and I were thinking about how we might visualize this. So the one thing I would say is there is no end point to digital transformation. It's a journey, and it's fine wherever you are on that curve, but you should think about where you want to be on that curve. Locally optimal business solutions are fine, but if you're trying to drive a whole university solution, that's going to be really tricky. But you know, I live in Oxford, and actually a localised optimum in Oxford is a pretty good outcome. Okay? You could get to really standardised interfaces and business components. And that's the thing where ideally we might end up in the fullness of time. But everybody will be somewhere on that journey. Okay? And then if I look at this curve, the impediments to progress will be, particularly in universities because times are hard, lack of investment, a culture of departmental autonomy. Recognise that? A couple of people nodded. You're all much further advanced than I thought you might be. A clear lack of directive to change. So, you know, somebody says we should do it, then somebody says, oh, maybe not, let's just sink back into where we are. And the incentives to progress can be national or institutional policies that drive centralisation. That's really hard to drive in a university structure. People are doing it and people are doing it successfully, but I think we should not underestimate the energy and the enthusiasm you need every day to get in and make some of that happen. Visionary leadership. And actually, digital transformation is hard for visionary leadership because if you're a head of an institution, a university, you're likely to have been a lecturer and then a professor and then a head of school and then you become the vice-chancellor. And in that time, where has your exposure to the opportunities on digital transformation come from? And it's not like in the business environment where you can go and find expertise in other sectors. So I was talking to Mel Brown yesterday from Elsevier, and actually there aren't many people who come in from business at the top level in universities that bring different experiences. Maybe that's something that all of you can bring to the party with all of your experience. A need to reduce costs. I think we have to say that, but I've seen in many institutions that have been trying to drive digital transformation, a realisation that actually if they can pull off digital transformation, they can switch what their staff do. They can switch their staff to higher value tasks, to more partnership broking, to being more effective. But all the time you've got the rubber stamp machine going on, it's very hard to get to that end point. And then sometimes, and we see this very often in universities now, unfortunately, it's something catastrophic. So a cybersecurity leak. Many universities now are really threatened by cybersecurity. So in the UK, PwC did an audit 2 years ago of all universities' risk registers. And the top risk for all universities in the UK was cybersecurity. And so actually, the sort of data and the sorts of activities that you're trying to centralise to make better decisions absolutely require a cybersecurity approach, which is quite difficult when everybody wants to go and use their own system and log in wherever they want to log in and share passwords. And I think it's really important that that environment is created so the great research that people do stays where it needs to stay and everyone is safe. So, I'm going backwards, sorry. I've got so engrossed in this story. Here we are. Okay, so what I don't want to say by showing these curves, and this is really important, that there is any singular outcome that every university drives for. So in the same survey we did about performance from leaders of universities, we asked them what their end goal was. And I was really heartened by this outcome. Not everybody wants to be the research-intensive university of the future, and it's a jolly good job because there can only be a handful of those. There were various outcomes that people were driving for. And just like there's no endpoint for digitization, there is no endpoint for a singular outcome for universities. And I think increasingly now, as society looks at universities to provide the future and the answers to the challenges that are facing their society and the globe, driving for multiple outcomes is a very healthy state for universities to be in. So all of those, the people who were running universities thought were very valid and outcomes they were striving for the mission of their university. So we're going to have a second Menti poll, and let's see if any of this resonates. So for the future state of your institution, do you think that digital transformation will be a key enabler? And so if you go back onto the poll, like magic, there'll be this second poll. So for the future, do you agree or disagree with your vice-chancellors? Is this a key enabler, or is it something that nobody should be concerned about? My God, I'm so glad that this audience said that, because otherwise I think we've had 2 days we could have been on the beach. Yeah, because we're doing the jobs you're doing, it's absolutely essential that you know what you're focused on. And that says it all, really. I think in the sessions I've been in, that's the strongest poll result I've seen. So I think you're all incredibly gainfully employed. Your challenge is enormous, but now we're going to move on to hear people who actually are doing this in their day job with their different experiences. So it's my delight to welcome my partner in crime, Amy, up to the stage, and we have a panel which I'm going to let Amy introduce. But I'm really looking forward to this because, my God, you're in the front line. Thank you.
So we are going to hear from our panellists now about their particular institutions and their particular stage of the digital transformation journey. And you've each got a very different story. So I really encourage you to begin with your institutional vision, where you are on the journey, and what have been some of the key enablers. Ashley, do you want to kick us off?
I'll kick us off. My name's Ashley Stewart. I'm from Monash University. We're based in Melbourne, Australia, so we've come from far away today, or for this conference, but it's always lovely to be here. Our institution, very much on the vision aspect, we always aim to be excellent, international, enterprising and inclusive are our values that's threaded through everything we do. And we've always been spread out very geographically across both our own state, where we were predominantly based, but we also have campuses in other countries, sort of in Malaysia and Indonesia, and a research institute in China as well, and a presence in Europe too. So being able to keep everybody moving in the same direction, technology is incredibly helpful, unsurprisingly. And I just wanted to pick up on one of the threads from the slides before, in that, in our view, the technology transformation, I think it's something that's going to just continue to forever. I don't think there ever is an endpoint. There's always new technologies that we never would have dreamed of even years ago that are just so prevalent these days. And even some of the API work that was not as prevalent in our day-to-day work. I've seen so many presentations at the conference as well on these, and the changes over the years and how even in our field we're all interfacing with technology. The pace of change has been so quick overall. At our institution, technology as a key enabler has been in our plans for at least a decade. So we've been very well supported by the high-level leaderships at our institution to undergo these digital transformation projects and have staff who have their eyes on what are the new technologies that we could be adopting to solve our problems, and also taking some chances on some newer technologies, which obviously it comes with a bit of risk, but it goes back to that enterprising side of our values, and taking some risks, a little bit of entrepreneurship of I think that this is going to work and be really great, and then see it through, which has really helped us support our digital transformation. We have over 8,000 researchers that we support. So doing things manually becomes really, really difficult once you've got that many people. A small percentage of records are still a lot of records for us. By the time, if something's wrong on 1% of researchers, it's a lot. So it'd take a lot of manual effort. So it really drove us to have to, I guess, consolidate our processes across all of our different locations to keep everybody moving without having to maintain all of their very localised processes. And then it also, on top of all of those reasons why we should adopt all of these technologies, is there's the reality that you can't set something up for once and that's your technology forever and you'll never have to move, and nothing will ever, no software will ever become end of life. There'll never be a bug, or there'll never be something new you want to try. It's just not how it works, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. And it can also be hard sometimes on top of these technologies is understanding how your users and all the people involved interface with it, because what we find as well is that sometimes something might get reported as a systems or technology issue, but it actually ends up being something completely different. It was maybe a miscommunication between somebody somewhere that they go, well, it doesn't work exactly how I want it to do, so I call that broken. And then they go tell somebody else, being like, no, that's not quite the case. And having to track people back down and try and figure out what's at the bottom of it. And we also try to constantly have our ear to the ground, I suppose, to catch those rumblings early to see if there's a problem that we need to solve. So there's also a lot of work that goes into the people side and communicating with lots of different stakeholders across the university on what their problems are, how we can resolve them, where there might be some middle ground or where there might be requirements that are must-haves and nice-to-haves, and where they align for everybody. And where trade-offs are reasonable, because it might take a bit of effort, but finding those middle grounds we like to think is possible. And then we're just really critical in our thinking around what technology we adopt. So it's always, we need to have a problem that we are trying to solve, and looking at the best ways that we can do that sustainably into the future.
You mentioned an entrepreneurial spirit and the kind of popularity of the API sessions at this conference. Where is that innovation effort happening in Monash at the moment?
So with the innovation on the APIs, so I remember back a few years ago, we had an Australian conference in Port Macquarie at Monash, and we were doing our first workshop in Australia on data cleaning with APIs. And we had a process where we were pulling out with a Python script from the external organisations all of our external organisations, running the titles through, spell checking, and then writing them back. So this was 2022 that we started doing that, and it just made such a humongous difference. And I'm sure everyone's got similar to us, these just never-ending external organisation lists, and we don't lock them down when people are entering them because we don't want to hold anybody up. But being able to come back and merge everything back together had such a humongous impact. And we're continuing to look at more ways that we can tidy things up with our APIs. So going back in around tidying up some of our persons data. We've also got some API-related integrations and award management where we actually connect with our funder to pull across our outcomes. So that's quite a long way from the story that Leslie was telling at the start of the trucks dropping off applications, in that we just via our funders' APIs can harvest the applications that our researchers are submitting, and then we can just pull the outcomes when they're available. So it almost feels a world away in some ways.
Science fiction in the 2000s.
Yeah,
but
it
now
does a little bit.
reality. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, so I am Shutapa Roy. I head the Faculty and Research Office at the Indian School of Business. When we talk about our vision, so we are an institution, we say our vision is to be an internationally top-ranked, research-driven, independent management institution that grooms future leaders to for India and the world. And in our mission statement, we actually give a lot of importance to research, and we say to create and disseminate research-based knowledge in management that influences scholarship, practice, and policy. When I talk about digital transformation, I think I'd like to set in a little context and give you a little background about ISP. We are a young institution completing our 25th year next year. And, we've kind of featured in top global B schools in the world. Ours is a standalone business school, not a part of the university, which makes the job harder because, we have to have robust governance mechanisms in place to run the place. So we started our digital transformation journey. And when we did it, we saw we have some additional governance challenges. For example, since we don't have senior faculty within the school and we follow a tenure track system, which is mostly followed, of course, in Europe and UK as well, but mostly in North America, most of our, the area or leaders or the department chairs actually come from our partner schools, the Wharton, Kellogg, and the London Business School, which means senior faculty members from those schools play a lot of important role in our faculty evaluation, recruitment, and other processes. Then we follow a portfolio mix of faculty, which means, it's a mix of resident and visiting faculty who teach in our programs. So now it kind of presents a lot of governance challenges with it, and we need robust, as I said, we need robust governance mechanisms in place. And so the digital transformation, when we undertook the journey, it was hard to make it happen because, we needed process transparencies, we needed role-based access, we had reviewers who were not within the school, but sitting externally, right? So we said we will reimagining how to think about the faculty ecosystem, which means the faculty life cycle overall. And we said we will reimagine or reshape how we basically think of insights, because there's lot of data which today remains in paper, or it used to remain in paper, and we wanted to transform that into a digitally agile faculty ecosystem. The way we did it was we looked around and we said, of course, the leadership had a vision, and we adopted that vision, and we said we will look for a system which is very well suited to handle a complex academic workflows. We went around, we did some benchmarking, and we found Interfolio was a system which had a proven track record of handling a complex workflow, right, an academic workflow. So instead of relying on our IT team, which had bandwidth constraints, we actually adopted Interfolio. We started our journey. There are 3 core businesses that it kind of helped transform. One was the faculty search module, which started with the faculty recruitment. Then we went to faculty professional journals, so basically when the faculty joins in, when are the person coming up for a review, when are they due for a promotion. So basically a personalized dashboard of milestones. That's what it gave us. And then our RPT, or the review promotion cycle, as I said, that had complex mechanisms. We needed to give in role-based access. So it kind of helped us, Interfolio helped us resolve those kind of, what do you call it, roadblocks that we were facing when we started. Then gradually what we did was, when we started the journey, we said, what kind of a problem are we trying to resolve here? What are we trying to address? Then we saw we had fragmented systems, like I think all of us in the room would know. Then there are spreadsheets, there are large spreadsheets, then there are emails, then there are cloud folders. And of course, there is lack of transparency, lack of ease of access. That was important, that we needed to tell our folks out there that this implementation is also going to help us bring down the administrative overhead, administrative inconvenience that we were facing. Coming to people, I think while you have a vision, the hardest thing in an institution is to drive the change or drive this digital transformation. And especially when you have faculty as the users, I think it gets harder. So what we did was, we had the vision, we had a top-down approach, but in an academic institution, just the dean coming and saying we want this to get done doesn't help. It is a system where, it's a tenure system where every academic has its own voice. So what we did was, we first got the faculty buy-in. Then we selected some faculty champions who had seen some of these systems, and who had, for example, our area leaders had seen it in our partner schools. They had experienced Interfolio. They knew that that can really make lives easier. So that way we got the faculty champions. There was pilots. There was co-creation. Lot of iterative processes that we followed. And finally, we also did some capacity building workshops where we trained our faculty. We told them that there will be ease of access. They'll be able to review their own dossiers. They don't need to go through a middleman, somebody who's coordinating on their behalf. There'll be better access controls. There'll be audit trails. There's so many things that we kind of took them through. And that's how we kind of made them happen. And what we've realized is, digital transformation doesn't happen until or unless people transform with it. And you need to take people first and process later. Okay, you have to make them co-own this whole initiative, and then only you can move forward. Right, I think digital transformation at ISPs made the institution much more agile, transparent, and institution has, or rather it's become a much intellectually better data-driven institution. It has insights. Having said that, it's a journey that we have started. We've come a long way, but there is also a long way to go. We have 3 modules of Interfolio, but seamless integration between the 3 modules are going to help. I think the team is already working on it. We still have some spreadsheets. It'll be great that we don't have we come into an era where there are no longer separate spreadsheets. It's just by the click of a button we get access to all information. That's where I think we would like to go to, and I think digital transformation has been a quite enabler of building process, people, and trust together. That's our experience.
Thank you so much. What's interesting about the two stories so far is we've had different use case focus. So Monash, I know you've spent a lot of time on your award management process and you're really focused on your academic evaluation process.
Correct.
So great, thank you so much. And Owen.
So I'm Owen Kilfeather. I'm the Common Services Unit Lead, so essentially looking after the R&I data function in our university, which is the Technological University of Dublin. Leslie's introduction has inspired me to draw from my own distant past, because the Technological University of Dublin is an amalgamation of three parent institutions, which were the Dublin Institute of Technology, Tala Institute of Technology, and Blanchardstown Institute of Technology. And the Dublin Institute of Technology was actually my alma mater, and so I came up through there and eventually became a postgraduate student, and it's back in 1994. And so I'm enrolled, and I say, yeah, where can I get an email address? And there was a sort of a crickets going. So eventually, I said, okay. They said, okay, well, you'll have to make a business case for a student having an email address. And so I went through this process. I filled out the business form, and they said, well, this is highly unusual, considering that even your professor doesn't have an email. So, okay, so here I am driving this digital transformation. So eventually I become an independent researcher. And what's the first thing I do is I set up my own departmental email server and a departmental web server. And so we're all hotshot. Anyway, fast forward, I leave the university. I work in the National Library for about a decade. And I return and I see the fruits of all those Egypts like me who had siloed off their data in 20 departmental web servers and so on. And so this idea of digital transformation, there's a danger in there, because without direction, without leadership to that digital transformation, you can make matters much worse.
Owen, before we move on, I just have to say that in the researcher engagement panel, you brought up a email innovation as well that a lot of people took note of. And so it seems like you're very passionate about email.
Well, yeah, so
key enabling technology.
One of the key things that I found is that people say, well, can Pure not just send me a Teams message? And we're just going, okay, well, like clearly there's been a sort of a sea change in how people say, well, take note, Elsevier product owners, possible integration there. But I suppose what I was getting to is like coming back in, and essentially I came in to run the Pure system. I helped as a consultant on the data migration from their bespoke research information system. I did the data transformation scripts, crosswalks, and so on. And I see straight away that there's missing data. There's data, and of course that's because of this kind of long-standing, this legacy of siloed data throughout the university. And then simple things like integration with our student record system, which should be, again, like a key driver of our that digital transformation path, where we can have, single point of information through Pure, but that the student records system doesn't have a usable API. So all of these coming in, so that's the bad place we start at. So how do we address that kind of journey of digital transformation? So a few kind of middle management people got together around, all facing similar problems, and we brought a proposal together to the executive team in the university around convening a digital data transformation steering group, board, as we actually call it. And so that, under the leadership of the Chief Information Officer, a role that had to be invented to kind of get leadership for this group, has now been in place for about a year. And so what that means is that when we have a business need coming through from any part of the university, that is put through the filter of this board. Well, filter is probably the wrong word, but through the advice of this board. And so, for example, it means that in procurement, we now specify the types of API capabilities that we need in systems. And so that awareness that we can't continuing to do digital transformation in nuggets. It actually, a transformation has to be holistically done. So I suppose that would be the thing that's kind of the most positive outcome of our journey, is actually around governance, is how do we manage that digital transformation and change.
Great, thank you. A couple of you mentioned managing the change for academics. Does anyone have a reflection on managing change for your professional services teams around adopting new technologies, for example?
So I think I do have some. I'll go back to picking on award and management just because I was talking about it earlier today, so it's on the mind as well, in that one of the ones that we have is, and it's also a constant reinforcement of it as well, as the adopting of the approval workflows and getting all of the departments very used to sort of how they record them, how they change if they need a different approver, how they do that, and trying to make everything very easy and seamless for them. But also, it's always interesting when you have something new, is that there's quite a lot of people who are apprehensive about it, even if there might not be something obvious on the surface. And I guess my biggest reflection on that is always trying to meet people where they're at with it and trying to listen to their concerns, see what we can address, and just be really patient around it, because I don't think you can't really get buy-in without, patience and understanding, and there's a lot of, I suppose, soft skills on top of teaching the technology that are really important in trying to help with that adoption.
Yeah, I think I think patience, as you said, is very important, and also showing people what technology can do. Right, we all are users of technology. We do play our own parts in the institution. We do a lot of administrative, at least I handle a large administrative team. I think it's very important to bring out the upsides of how it's going to make your life easy. Talking about ease of access, talking about data, talking about insights that you can draw from the data. Having said that, I think change is difficult. I'll just give you a small examples. When we run our tenure review process, we get external letters from external letter writers across the globe. It's a question of sending reminders, right? There's so many times that you need to remind them. You have to keep a reminder for yourself when you're doing it through emails, or when we used to do it through emails. First reminder, second reminder, third reminder. But with a system in place, what you need to do is to just set it up, and it automatically sends the reminders. So if you are actually trying to get 100 letters, it makes your job so easy when you actually are setting it up and saying, let the system send the reminder. So this is how, while people are resistant to change, when you show at least 2 or 3 key takeaways or upsides to these kind of changes, I think it just makes the job a little easier. But yes, adopting any system, first of all, has its own challenges, plus designing the workflows, customizing the workflows that suit your, university system. It's not easy. You have to take the plunge. It's a difficult road to tread, but you have to do it. And at the end, you can see what the system can do. It can really make your life easy.
Well, the question, I think, was specifically about professional services staff, but I'm going to bring it back to that email example, because
Please do.
That kind of campaign actually grew out of an exercise that we have a change management office in the university, and so they went to the Digital and Data Transformation Board, and they said, we're the change management office. And we go, huh? What's that? What's change management? So I'm introduced to the kind of the formal practice of change management and a change management plan. And I'm saying, oh, another bloody report, another thing to write. But actually, when I sat down to kind of look at our stakeholders about like what the needs of each of them were, it gave me the time to think about just, well, okay, how are we know that we're not getting through to all of our researchers. We know that we're giving them pure logins and they're not logging in. We know that they're logging in, but they're not linking their ORCID. And so we kind of sat down and we thought about how would we segment that in a way that we could kind of target that. And then we thought, well, actually, we don't need to actually segment it in a sort of a formal way. We'll just let the reporting module do it for us. And so we devised the report. We did a simple Word document, put in conditional paragraphs, and out it spits the emails. And it was by far the most successful thing we had to influence change in our researchers. Since then, we've also used reporting in a way that targets our administrative staff in support in particular ways. So we can kind of see in the award management module where there are, let's say, hold-ups or kind of roadblocks, and we can use that as a way to kind of go back to the support people and say, well, you know, what can we do to make your life easier here? So that's led to some changes. For example, additional milestones on applications to help make sure that all the documentation gets put on there.
That's a really interesting example. So you got kind of feedback of what was challenging, and then you were able to kind of evolve the process.
Yeah, exactly.
As a result of that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Let's open up the conversation to questions from the audience.
We are reaching the end of day 2.
We can take questions at the bar as well. It's fine.
Is there any particular technologies that people are interested in asking about in terms of looking in the crystal ball 20 years in the future?
Hi, it's Lita from the University of Manchester. So I guess something that we're wrangling with, and I mentioned this in my presentation yesterday, is that universities are very good at being both 10 years ahead and in the future, and I said 10 years, but I probably should have said about 25 years behind in terms of implementing this stuff itself, in terms of managing our business processes. And I think something that we're kind of thinking about at Manchester, and it'd be interesting to see what the panel think, is whether the systems that we have now are going to be almost recede into being systems of record, and we'll have a different digital layer, a different kind of way for our researchers and our colleagues, our professional services staff to kind of, you know, gather and you know, process this information and run our businesses and all those things. And so we don't have an answer at Manchester. I just wondered if it's a question that's coming up elsewhere.
I'm happy to start off and try and answer. We are grappling with similar things as well, in that we have, I think it's one of those things, the systems are so much more user-friendly than they used to be, but then people sort of take that for granted and want it magically somehow even easier. So I think we might end up with a lot more of those, and I've seen it in some of the presentations, there's these sort of extra layers that are being built over the top so you can ask questions and all of that. And then I think from talking to a lot of people around, we've got sort of these big institutional storehouses of data as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how everything evolves and whether we do still have these systems, but then you also have the questions of, do you have something over the top for the researchers so they have a one-stop shop, or do you still keep everything split out in research and education? So it's, you know, things that a lot of us are grappling with. So it's an excellent question.
Yeah, it's not just key technologies that are evolving, it's also user expectations around interface behaviour rapidly evolving as well. Does anyone else have any?
No, what Ashley said.
Yeah, what Ashley
Yeah.
said.
Thank you for the panel discussion. Since you are all from different universities, it would be really nice for me to know, in a nutshell, except Scopus and Scival, which are probably predominantly covered by everybody, what type of products or solutions that you use from Elsevier in a nutshell, and why?
Well, we use Pure, unsurprisingly, given we're at this conference. And we also use, and we use it because we wanted to have one system where we could have all of our research outputs, our profiles, our activities, our awards management in one location and very interlinked. So we could make the use of the intelligence, the business intelligence we get from having it in all one system all together, and also the more consistent user experience across the different parts of the research lifecycle. We also draw on a lot of Scopus data to make that a lot easier, having our researchers being able to pull in their Scopus data, and also having a source for metrics is quite helpful for our promotions processes. And we also use Scival for that sort of business intelligence, sometimes when you're looking much broader than just what a researcher's done at your institution. You can also see what they did more over their career and sort of more assess research teams as well.
Not everyone will have the Pure award management module, so could you just add a sentence on why you've adopted that?
So obviously there's lots of options in how you can tackle award management. And having, I guess there's always a trade-off, and there's lots of different ways you can put technology together. So you can have, I know some institutions are quite set up to have separate systems, and we wanted to have it all in one centralized system. And one thing that we really appreciate with the award management module is that it helps with that tension that you get, and that it's flexible enough to account for the particular quirks and needs of different faculties in ways that they're happy with, while still having an overall quite centralised process. And it also helps us pull together all of that data as a sort of an output from this process that we can use for business improvement, so keeping an eye on how it's all going, but also using this data to look at where our opportunities are, where there might be more support needed. And it wouldn't really be possible without all of the great work that goes into that module and all the great information that we get out of it.
So at ISV, the only product that we use is Interfolio. And if you ask me why we use it, of course, we looked around and we found that it had proven capability to handle the academic workflows, which was needed in this managing the whole faculty life cycle module. Secondly, I think because of the complex governance systems that we had in place, it had the capability to kind of get custom configurations done. We could actually make custom configurations done, which helped us, address our needs on priority. Then it also has ease of access, which is very important, because when you are training somebody, when you are actually making this change management and asking somebody to adopt a system, the ease of access and an easy user interface is very important. And lastly, I would say, data-driven insights, reports. Reports are really helpful whenever we need to take a decision. I think reports, something that it gives great reports, right? Insights, and that's the reason we chose Interfolio.
So we obviously have Pure, and within Pure we have also the award management module, and I think that the reporting module and the portal are like technically like bolt-on. So we have the portal and the reporting module. we also subscribe to Scopus. We are a customer of Digital Commons. I don't think there's anything Elsevier sells that we don't buy, actually. We should get a discount, right? And why? Okay, well, Digital Commons was, we were one of the first institutions to set up an institutional repository in Ireland. Digital Commons was one of the few actors available at the time. And because we were such an early adopter, I think it's fair to say that we made some mistakes in the configuration of our, not mistakes, they were just choices that were made at the time to have a very simplified schema, which came back later to bite us, but we've dealt with that. So the reason we went for pure is that it really was bringing together all the kind of ambitions that we had been trying to do with our own bespoke research information system, but really didn't have the technical capacity, the financial capacity to do. Also, I think it's fair to say that because it has, shout out to Lars and the API team, and it's getting better, is I think it's got really great scope for integration and for extensibility. Like looking at the other business applications that the university uses, its API offering is so much further ahead than anything else we see. So I think that, you know, I think that's a commitment that Elsevier has made, is to this extensibility and, you know, transparency of data, and, you know, that it's your data and you can get it out. So I think that that's kind of that's our rationale for how we make our purchase decisions.
Hello, I'm Max from Elsevier. Question. So I think, if I'm not wrong, that all three of your institutions are very do a lot with companies, do a lot of collaborations externally. And I was just wondering if one of you or all of you would like to share some of your experiences in doing that, and if it has helped or hindered your digital transformation to work with companies or external organizations. Thank you.
I don't think there's anything really that an institution of our scale, we're kind of medium-sized institution, can do without the help of third parties. You know, software as a service is, you know, really kind of baked into almost all of our procurement decisions now. I mean, on-prem isn't really a consideration for anything. Obviously our biggest spend is with Microsoft. We're an Office customer. We rely on it for our email and all of those things. The nitty gritty is in kind of integration across business cloud providers, like Elsevier talking to our Active Directory, Azure Directory. So I would say that the hindrance is really probably in our own capacity to integrate those systems and to have sufficient leverage to make sure that we get sufficient cooperation from vendors to allow us to do those sort of integrations that will drive our digital transformation. I'll harp on about it, but really the API offerings on some of these business systems is really atrocious, and it's a legacy issue. It wasn't baked into the procurement.
Have you changed that now with your data governance board?
Yeah, we wouldn't buy anything without without driving that through. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I have a bit of it's quite similar to yours in that we don't really have, I'm not sure the in-house system is really much of a thing anymore. We've got the whole Google Suite for our emails and a lot of documents, and we've got third-party systems for research information, but also for HR and finance and student management systems as well. So there's really a lot in integrating those, and I suppose the trade-off there is sometimes you might have a really great idea that you want to implement yesterday, but you can't because you can't go change the system yourself. So it's always a game of coming up with these great ideas and how patient can we be before somebody wants to go add a new application into our mix versus trying to see if we can get buy-in to get something sort of amended, or trying to have systems that have enough flexibility that we can sort of push to its limits or work around. So for example, the APIs is a great example of, if we want to go ahead and connect things, we don't need to wait for a bespoke connector to put the two systems together. We can go in and do it ourselves if we decide it's really something urgent.
Yeah. I think both of them have actually articulated what I would also want to say. It's a nightmare to integrate systems, and and there are these challenges which all of us have faced and will keep facing. But yeah, just get it done. Maybe I'd like to talk about a task force that was constituted with the recent advances in technology, with AI, generative AI, all the stuff that's happening. We do have a task force that's been constituted. We are looking at a school-wide, process improvements. We are looking at stuff that can be automated with the help of AI. And there are pilots that are running across the school. Different processes are being re-looked at, reviewed. And we have our in-house IT team, which is actually helping each of these units look at processes, see what can be improved, things that can be automated, things that will bring down the administrative overhead, because there are too many people doing manual things together. So that's something that we are actively as a school pursuing and making steady progress.
Good.
So I think from my perspective, it's probably really just trying to reinforce that culture of continual learning and continual improvement, because there's new technologies all the time, and also just encouraging people to, be critical about what technologies you're adopting when there's new ones, but also in just not being afraid to learn, try new things, and just also reinforcing continual learning, providing opportunities for people to upskill and to work on projects that help reinforce those as well as we continually adopt new technologies. I'm sure there'll be new ones in years that we can't imagine today, just like there have been already.
I can't top that.
Maybe one last. And you did mention that you have a change management office.
Yes, we do.
Could you tell us a little bit about that, maybe?
Oh, now you're.
Okay.
We as part of the amalgamation of the three parent institutions, there was an organizational design exercise, long exercise, and the outcome of that was underneath the operational head. There was a change management office introduced, and their portfolio is across the university. So essentially, their role is there to educate essentially about change management. They don't have an enforcement role. they're there to guide us as business units on best practice in change management, helping us come up with those plans, and then kind of that's a virtuous feedback that good practice is kind of then disseminated out of there. It's a very small office. I think there's only 3 people in it, but they do a great job.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Right, so it turns to me to close this session. When we started yesterday morning, I didn't quite know what to expect. I've been excited and challenged by what I've heard. And I just think the roundup that this panel has given us on their insights, their passion for technology. But I think the one thing that came from the 3 of you was your sensitivity to people and your appreciation that actually to achieve what you're trying to achieve for better outcomes for your institution is really dependent on all of your people skills. That was hugely impressive. So the people who've just come into the room have missed a really great session. Sorry, but it will be recorded. Amy, thank you very much for being my partner in crime. I think the future is much brighter if we learn and work together. And I hope that as we move forward, we've had a great demonstration of Elsevier products, but I hope we can evolve together, so together we can make the world a better place through research. Really like you all to thank the panel. They've been superb. Thank you.